Hello, welcome to the channel Why Stories. Enjoy watching.
With the money from the wedding, we'll buy an apartment and register it in my mother's name. The woman was stunned by her husband's words, and in the morning, taking the money. The weather outside was rainy. Occasionally, the clouds would disperse, and bright sunbeams would fall on the city, illuminating all its grandeur. Maria walked down the main avenue with measured steps. She was in no hurry. The girl had successfully defended her thesis at the State University of Economics, majoring in hospitality management. Her mood was high, and the weather didn't scare her, as she loved the rain. Maria had always walked in the rain for as long as she could remember, having gone through many umbrellas over the years. In her opinion, the rain symbolized something new, washing away everything unnecessary. She especially liked the smell of rain. It was fresh and uniquely natural. Maria fully enjoyed this day, feeling that a new chapter in her life was beginning. She walked down the avenue, her face shining so brightly that passers-by couldn't help but notice her. "You look like a star," came an enthusiastic male voice nearby. Maria turned her head to the right and saw a tall, dark-haired guy smiling broadly at her. "Excuse me, what did you say?" the girl asked again. "I said you look like a star," the guy repeated. "You're mistaken, I'm not a star and never have been," Maria said, puzzled. "I don't act in movies or sing." "That's not what I mean," laughed the young man. "You shine like a little star in the sky." Maria blushed. She had never received such compliments from strangers before, and she smiled slightly. The traffic light turned green, and she started to cross the road. "Don't run away from me." The young man followed her, and the girl remained silent. She didn't know what to say to him. "Let's get acquainted," he suggested when they had crossed the road. "My name is Marcelo, and yours?" "Maria," the girl whispered quietly, as a random acquaintance on the street was not part of her plans. "Are you always this shy, or only in front of handsome guys?" Marcelo joked. "You think highly of yourself, I see," Maria smiled. "I have a rule." "And what is it?" the guy interrupted her. This charming blonde had intrigued him. "I never meet people on the street," she blurted out. "There are exceptions to every rule," Marcelo persisted. "This time there won't be one," Maria replied confidently. "So you're an impregnable fortress," the guy laughed again. "I don't recall us switching to informal speech," the girl scolded him. "Why the formalities?" Marcelo continued. "Life should be taken more easily." "You know," Maria looked at him intently. "I'm not one of those people who like to simplify everything." "So you're one of those who like to complicate things," the young man smirked. "Don't look for easy paths?" "You could say that," the girl confirmed. "And you, in my opinion, are too frivolous." "Why do you think so?" Marcelo was surprised. "Because you meet the first girl you see on the street." Maria waved her hand and walked away. "Maybe it's fate," Marcelo caught up with her. "You believe in fate too," Maria said disappointedly. "Maybe you also think there are no random encounters?" "Exactly," the guy said happily. "You said it yourself, and let's switch to informal speech." "Admit, it's more convenient." "Fine, have it your way," Maria agreed. "Now can we go our separate ways?" "Are you always this sociable?" Marcelo couldn't help but want to talk to her more. "To be honest, a random acquaintance wasn't part of my plans for today," the girl started to open up. "Let's each go our own way. You may think I'm frivolous, but I still believe in fate." "How about this?" Maria looked at the guy mysteriously. "If you believe in fate so much, then it will surely bring us together again." "We live in a big city," Marcelo said thoughtfully. "That's exactly what I wanted to prove," the girl replied happily. "You don't really believe in fate." "You know, let's test it," the young man continued more confidently. "If fate brings us together again in this big city, you will have to go on a date with me." "Deal," Maria smiled and extended her hand for a handshake. "Great," Marcelo shook her hand. "Until we meet again then." "Goodbye," Maria blew him a kiss and walked away. Later, she scolded herself for that gesture. She had never noticed such frivolity in herself before. A month later, Maria was going for an interview at the friend's hotel. The girl was very nervous. It was her first interview, and she wasn't sure she would get the job. Maria stopped at the entrance to the hotel. She was overcome with strong anxiety. She couldn't do anything about it. After standing there for 15 minutes, Maria began to realize that she might be late due to her uncertainty, so taking a deep breath and a slow exhale, she opened the entrance door and walked in confidently. Near the reception desk stood a young man of about 30, who, noticing the girl, smiled broadly and approached her. "Good afternoon. Would you like to check into our hotel?" "No," Maria shook her head. "I came for an interview." "Great," the young man said slowly, looking her over appraisingly. "For which position?" "Receptionist." Maria began to feel a bit uncomfortable. "Have a seat here," the young man pointed to a blue chair for visitors, "and wait." The girl obediently sat down, and the young man went somewhere. Maria began to look around, examining the hotel's interior. She liked the yellow-blue color of the reception area. Everything looked very modern. Not far from her was a coffee table with various correspondence on it. With one hand, Maria picked up the first magazine she saw and began to flip through it. Interesting, a male voice suddenly came from behind. Maria dropped the magazine and, turning her head, saw the same young man. "You scared me," she said, picking up the magazine from the floor. "I didn't even have time to look at anything. Natalia Gonzalez is a bit busy and asked you to wait, so you'll have time to read." The young man sat down opposite Maria and began to stare at her intently. The girl was embarrassed by his gaze and stared at the magazine, pretending to read, though she occasionally glanced at the young man. "Let's switch to you," the young man interrupted the pause. "It's easier, don't you agree?" "I've heard that somewhere before." Maria felt a sense of déjà vu. "All right, let's do that." "Great," the young man smiled. "By the way, I'm Norman. What's your name?" "Nice to meet you. I'm Maria. Do you know that your name means rebellious?" A satisfied smirk appeared on the young man's face, as if he had revealed a great secret. "Of course, I know," the girl sighed, as it wasn't the first time someone had tried to introduce themselves this way. "It's no secret. I even know that your name means manly and brave. But you don't look it." Maria laughed quietly, seeing the unspoken question in the young man's eyes. "I'll explain." She decided not to wait for the question and immediately revealed her cards. "You're dressed a bit strangely." "I am dressed perfectly." Norman jumped up, approached the mirror, and began to scrutinize himself. "That's exactly what I mean," the girl laughed out loud. "Would a manly guy look at himself in the mirror because of some random stranger's words? It says more about your insecurity. And you're a psychologist too, I see." He turned to her. "Too smart?" "I don't consider myself too smart. Rather, smart enough and reasonably educated," Maria said with dignity. "Do you smell that?" The young man started sniffing. "No," the girl spread her hands in confusion. "What does it smell like?" "Your arrogance." Norman laughed loudly, and Maria laughed too. At that moment, the guy's phone rang. "Yes, of course, I'll show you the way now," he answered. "Let's go. Natalia Gonzalez is free." They walked down a long, bright corridor with guest rooms on both sides. "What is she like?" Maria suddenly asked. "Who?" Norman didn't understand. "Natalia Gonzalez. Strict but fair," the manager described. "Don't be afraid of her, we respect her." "That's a good recommendation," the girl smiled, and they stopped at an office. "Come in," said Norman, opening the door. "Hello," Maria entered timidly. "I'm here for the interview." "Don't be shy. Come in and have a seat," offered a well-groomed middle-aged brunette. Maria sat down at the table opposite the manager. "Did you bring your documents?" "Yes, of course." Maria took the documents out of her bag and handed them to Natalia Gonzalez. The woman looked at the passport with obvious interest, then the diploma. A red diploma is excellent, the manager nodded approvingly, but it's just a piece of paper and you have no experience. Where am I supposed to get it if I just graduated from university? Don't worry, the woman noticed the girl was getting anxious. I mean, everything is learned in practice. Are you hiring me? The girl asked hopefully. On a probationary period for now, the manager reassured her. How long is the probationary period? Maria inquired. 3 months, the woman replied, but if you show yourself well, it will end sooner for you. I will do my best, Maria promised. Good, Norman will explain the receptionist duties to you. He will also go over the contract with you. Can I go? The girl stood up from the chair. Yes, Norman will brief you, and you can start your training tomorrow. Goodbye. Finishing the conversation, Natalia Gonzalez picked up a planner and began writing something, and Maria quietly left the office where Norman was waiting for her. How was your interview? He asked. I didn't quite get it. Maria looked confused. What was unclear? I imagined the interview differently. With lots of questions, a long conversation, but here, the girl paused for a second. You mean that? Norman smiled. Natalia Gonzalez is a businesswoman and doesn't like wasting time on unnecessary talk. She values her time. Then how does she know if a person is suitable? Maria asked, surprised. Just by looking at the documents? No, she's also a psychologist. She can see right through a person. She believes that anyone truly reveals themselves only in practice, not in theory. Well, then she could just send people straight to training without an interview. Maria suddenly felt a bit upset that she didn't seem to be of much interest. You'll understand her later. You need to get used to it here, the guy smiled again. She invited you to see you in person. If she didn't like you, you wouldn't have made it to the training. Everything is so complicated here, Maria concluded. Natalia Gonzalez said you would explain and show me everything. Yes, of course, Norman confirmed. Let's go to the reception, I'll brief you. Norman spent another 3 hours showing Maria the hotel and explaining the duties of an administrator. She listened with bated breath, fascinated by every detail, and didn't hesitate to ask questions along the way. Well, that should be enough for today, Norman concluded the tour. But I haven't learned everything yet, Maria said disappointedly. Let's continue a bit more. Stop. I have plenty of work myself. You'll start your internship tomorrow and we'll continue then, he replied firmly. Oh, I just realized I haven't asked you what your job here is. I'm Natalia Gonzalez's deputy, Norman said proudly. Cool, Maria was delighted. She felt pleased that on her first incomplete workday, she had already befriended the deputy manager. I thought you were also an administrator. Well, the deputy's job includes substituting for any line staff, so temporarily I'm also replacing the administrator. But now that we've found you, I can finally return to my main duties. You're welcome, Maria smirked and winked at Norman. See you tomorrow. She left the hotel, while Norman stood by the entrance, thinking about how Maria had captivated him, though he couldn't pinpoint why. Maybe it was her spirited personality, her deep blue eyes, or her luxurious, snow-like blonde hair cascading over her shoulders like beautiful waterfalls, or perhaps it was all of these combined. For the rest of the day, Norman kept trying to push thoughts of Maria out of his mind, but her image seemed to be imprinted in his memory. He couldn't believe that a random encounter with a stranger had touched him so deeply. He had always been against workplace romances, but now he was ready to break his own rules. Calm down, get her out of your head, keep everything under control, he kept telling himself, but it didn't help. Maria successfully passed her probation period, shortened to 2 months due to her hard work and, of course, Norman's excellent recommendations. During those 2 months, Norman kept trying to court Maria, but to no avail. All his flower bouquets were returned, the sweets given away to colleagues, and he didn't dare take more serious steps, fearing the same outcome. The hotel was abuzz with rumors about them, but credit must be given to Maria. She always quashed these conversations, not letting gossipers run wild with their fantasies. Natalia Gonzalez was very pleased with Maria, often assigning her overtime tasks, which Maria gratefully completed. Natalia called her one day. "I've heard some rumors. I don't usually believe gossip, but this is being shouted from every corner." "What do you mean?" Maria didn't understand. "I'm talking about you and Norman, if you know what I mean." Natalia Gonzalez looked at Maria questioningly. "Not really." Maria found it unpleasant to discuss this topic. "Are you two a couple?" the manager asked directly. "Understand, I don't mind, but work must come first." "Where did you get that idea?" Maria was a bit indignant. "We're just friends." "Do you believe in friendship between a man and a woman?" Natalia Gonzalez smiled sincerely. "Why not? I don't deny that it's possible." "How naive you are." The woman looked at the inexperienced young girl. She felt a twinge of envy that she herself no longer had this faith in all things good and had long stopped believing in fairy tales. "Maybe I'm naive, but I don't spread gossip." With these words, Maria's eyes widened. She immediately realized she had said something inappropriate, but as they say, you can't take back words once spoken. "Are you being cheeky?" the manager responded calmly. "Maintain subordination, please. Or have you forgotten who you're talking to?" "Oh, I'm sorry." Natalia Gonzalez. Maria began to apologize. "I don't know, it just slipped out." "Go back to work," the woman said with displeasure, and Maria realized she was in trouble. "Okay, I'll go then." Maria shot out of the manager's office like a bullet, stopped near the door, and couldn't catch her breath. "What happened?" Norman, who was nearby, approached her. I'm such an idiot," Maria cried. He hugged her. He didn't want to find out the reason, he was just pleased to support her. "So, what happened?" he asked for propriety's sake. "I said something stupid to her." Maria held her head in her hands, feeling both ashamed and embarrassed in front of the manager. "Whatever you said, it can always be fixed," Norman tried to calm her. "Go apologize." "I already did, but she's still upset." Tears rolled down Maria's cheeks again. Norman wiped them away with his hand, finding it pleasant to touch her soft, velvety skin. Her tears reminded him of dewdrops, just as pure and clear. He was ready to give a lot to ensure she never cried again. "Calm down, my dear," he whispered to her. Maria looked at him, their gazes met, and something incredible happened, an indescribable magnetism. They were drawn to each other so strongly that it was impossible to stop. Their lips touched and merged in a passionate kiss. "And you say it's just friendship," suddenly said the voice of Natalia Gonzalez, who had stepped out of the office. "I don't understand." The girl blushed like a tomato, wishing she could disappear from the embarrassment of the moment. "It just happened." "There's no need to justify yourself," the woman patted her on the shoulder and turned to Norman. "I hope this won't affect the quality of your work." "I promise everything will be as always, at the highest level," the young man replied affirmatively. "What I love about you is your honesty and keeping your promises," smiled Natalia Gonzalez and returned to her office. "Oh God, how embarrassing," exclaimed Maria. "Don't worry. Everything will be fine now." Norman hugged her tightly. He wanted to hold his beloved girl like this for the rest of his life and never let her go. Maria took a deep breath. She couldn't fully understand what had happened between them and why she was suddenly so drawn to him. She decided not to dwell on it and give the young man a chance to make her happy. "Let's agree not to rush things," she said. "As you wish," Norman smiled. It didn't matter to him what would happen next. The main thing was that she was here, with him. Over the next 6 months, their relationship flourished. Norman courted her beautifully, and their colleagues envied their relationship. Every week, the young man gave Maria bouquets of flowers, sometimes roses, sometimes tulips, sometimes orchids. Maria herself hadn't decided which flowers she liked best, so she enjoyed any kind. Besides, no one had ever shown her such consistent attention before. After each workday, Norman would walk her home, hoping for an invitation for an evening coffee, but Maria wasn't in a hurry to invite him over. She liked him, of course, but she wasn't entirely sure he was the one she wanted to spend her life with. Something was missing. Perhaps her feelings weren't deep enough, or maybe they weren't there at all. Just a liking and nothing more. Every girl dreams of a grand and pure love, to see and never want to part. She didn't have those feelings for Norman, but since there was no one else on the horizon, she decided he would do. However, sometimes at night, her conscience tormented her, and she feared hurting the young man with her confession of not having feelings for him. By morning, her conscience would calm down, and everything would go on as usual. The young man, on the other hand, wasn't quite happy with this arrangement. He couldn't understand why their relationship wasn't progressing beyond kisses and hugs, especially since his desire grew stronger each day. He longed to feel her soft, firm body in his strong, manly hands, but that wasn't happening. Another in his place would have long cooled off and left the object of his desire alone, but not him, for in addition to physical attraction, he had real, deep feelings for her. He decided it was love. "Let's go to my place today," he suggested to Maria one day. "Why?" she feigned surprise, pretending not to understand what he meant. "The weather outside is great. Let's go for a walk instead." "Great?" "It's raining." Norman was slightly annoyed by her categorical stance on spending time together at home. "Did I ever say I love rain?" "No," the young man replied dryly, "and I don't like it much either." "Strange, you live in a city where it rains all the time, and you don't like rain?" Maria was surprised. "Is that even possible? And I love you, but you stubbornly refuse to come to my place, and you don't invite me over either. Don't you find that strange?" Norman decided to set things straight. "I asked you not to rush me," she reminded him. "Is that request so hard to fulfill?" "Maria, we've been together for 6 months, only kissing in corners. Don't you find that funny?" Norman asked indignantly. "If my friends found out, I'd be the subject of their jokes. I didn't know your friends' opinions were so important to you. I thought you were a self-sufficient person who only cared about his own opinion. But please understand me," Norman softened. "I love you very much and want us to be closer to each other. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not ready for the next step yet," Maria spoke candidly. "I'm fine with things as they are. But I'm not. I want to move forward." Norman took her hands and looked into her eyes. "I desire you so much, insanely. My patience is running out." "And what will happen when it completely runs out?" She withdrew her hands. "Will we break up?" "No, of course not," exclaimed Norman. "I just can't go on like this. I think I'm losing my mind." "Well, let's go for a walk today, and we'll see about the evening," Maria said. Maria kissed him on the cheek and went to her workstation. Norman stood still for a couple more minutes, feeling a spark of hope ignite inside him. He was really looking forward to the evening ahead, and with this thought, he worked until the end of the workday. "Shall we go?" he asked as he approached the reception desk. "Yes, just a couple more minutes and I'll be free." Maria was finishing her shift and needed to wrap up some documents. "All right, I'll be back in 5 minutes then." Norman stepped out of the hotel. 10 minutes later, he returned with a gorgeous bouquet of pure white roses. His face was beaming with happiness. "These are for you," he said, handing the flowers to Maria. "Thank you." "That's so nice," she said, inhaling the fragrance of the flowers. "Shall we go for a walk?" "Let's go." The young man took her hand, and they headed outside. Their walk along the avenue was calm and pleasant. They chatted about various trivial things, not paying attention to the drizzling rain. After an hour, Norman started checking his watch. "What time is it?" the girl asked. 10:30, he replied. "It's time to go home. Will you walk me there? How about coming to my place instead?" Norman decided to make one last attempt to invite her over. Maria looked at him silently. She didn't know what to do in this situation. She was afraid that after their intimacy, she would become more attached to him, which she didn't particularly want. But seeing his pleading eyes, she decided to agree. All right, but just for a short while. You won't regret it. Norman suddenly lifted her up and spun her around. They quickly made their way towards his house, which was a 15-minute walk away. You live with your mom, right? Maria remembered. Isn't she home? She's at the country house, the young man reassured her. We'll be alone. The night passed quickly. They drank champagne, and Norman fed her strawberries with cream. Maria had never tried strawberries with cream before, and she liked it. The young man put on some music, invited her to dance slowly, and dimmed the lights. During the dance, Maria once again felt an attraction to the young man. She could no longer resist her desires. He sensed her mood, lifted her into his arms, and carried her to the bedroom. They had never been so close before. He touched her body tenderly, caressing her with his hands and covering her with passionate kisses. Maria moaned with desire. She realized she had waited too long for this. Norman was very gentle and attentive to her. Everything went perfectly. He hadn't felt this happy in a long time. And now what? She asked after their intimate moment. What do you mean? Norman didn't quite understand. What will happen between us now? She repeated. You got what you wanted. Are you no longer interested in me? Why do you say that? He sat up in bed and leaned over her, kissing her neck tenderly. I love you and I'm not letting you go. Maria didn't say anything else. She began to realize that she might have made a mistake for which she would have to pay later. She couldn't sleep for the rest of the night. She watched Norman sleep, wanting to get up and run away, but an irresistible force kept her there. This isn't right. I'll only make things worse, she told herself, understanding that she didn't love him at all and that it wasn't his fault. Son, a woman's voice unexpectedly called out in the morning, are you still asleep? Norman, wake up. Maria started shaking the young man. I think your mom is back. How is that possible? He jumped out of bed. She was supposed to stay at the country house for 3 more days. Hi, the woman stood frozen in the doorway, while Maria pulled the blanket over herself more tightly. Good morning, the girl said shyly. Good morning, the woman smiled and looked at her undressed son, who was covering his lower half with a sheet. I'll make breakfast, and you two come to the kitchen. Okay, Mom, Norman called after his departing mother. I won't have breakfast. Maria started dressing quickly. I'll eat at home. Don't even think about it, Norman stopped her. Don't offend my mom. Besides, it's a good chance to get to know her. Yeah, can't think of a better way, the girl said, stretching her words. No refusals. Let's go. Norman took her hand and led her to the kitchen. Can I at least wash up? Maria asked quietly. Of course. The bathroom is right there, he pointed to the door. We'll be waiting for you in the kitchen. Maria closed the bathroom door, turned on the water full blast, and started thinking about what to do. If I sneak out now, it will look bad, but staying isn't comfortable either, she thought out loud. Well, I have no choice. While the girl was washing up, Norman's mother started questioning her son. Son, is this the Maria you were talking about? Yes, the young man smiled contentedly, that's her. She's quite pretty, from what I could see. Mom, that's enough, Norman blushed, but thanks for the compliment on my taste. Just like your mother, the woman laughed. Good taste and smart too. You're showering me with compliments. Norman always enjoyed hearing praises from his mother. Enough idle chatter, the woman leaned on the table with both hands and hovered over her son like a hawk. What are your plans for this girl? Don't pressure me, Norman stood up sharply. My plans are my own for now. Don't be rude to your mother, the woman protested, and sit down, please. Mom, don't start. I'm begging you, son. I always worry about you, the woman continued calmly. You don't need to rush now. You have your whole life ahead of you. What do you mean? Norman looked at his mother suspiciously. I want you to succeed in life, and marriage right now is unnecessary. Mom, I'll decide for myself what I need and what I don't, the young man replied irritably, and you shouldn't interfere with your advice. Sit and listen to your wise mother, the woman said in a commanding voice. Do you want a spectacular career and a stable, high income? Then you need to think more about yourself, not about fleeting infatuations. But she. Don't tell me it's love. The woman looked at her son mockingly, but saw seriousness in his eyes. Not that. Are you crazy? What's the problem? Norman was bewildered. As you know, you can't command the heart. But why now? The woman pleaded. Am I interrupting? Maria entered the kitchen. Meet my mother, Paloma Diaz. Norman gestured to the woman standing nearby, and this is my Maria. I figured, Norman's mother smirked. Have a seat and join us for breakfast. Maria sat next to Norman, feeling a bit uneasy in the company of a woman she barely knew, who was also scrutinizing her intently. Should I spin around? The girl couldn't help but say. Sorry, what did you say? Paloma couldn't believe her ears. Nothing. The girl stared at her cup. She realized she had blurted out something unnecessary again. So, I misheard. The woman carefully lifted her coffee cup and, as if savoring fine wine, took a sip. I have to go, Maria said timidly. How come? Norman was surprised. Dear, you haven't eaten anything, Paloma Diaz feigned concern. Perhaps you'll stay? Thank you for the offer, but I really have to go. The girl waved her hand and left for the hallway. Norman followed her. No means no, Paloma said aloud, looking calm as a boa. Why are you leaving? Norman caught up with the girl. She doesn't like me, Maria replied. What makes you think that? Don't pretend. I heard almost everything, Maria admitted. Or did you think I'd take that long to wash up? She's my mother and will always be the closest person to me, and I have no right to judge her. You're right, she's your mother, the girl got angry. But I don't understand why I have to tolerate her. Please, don't be offended. You both mean the world to me. Maria gave Norman a disapproving look and, without saying anything, left the apartment. Thanks to you, we had a fight, the young man returned to the kitchen. What did I say? Don't play the victim. It's your fault. Son, how am I to blame? For being a mother? That's not the point, Norman shouted in frustration. You're a smart woman, but you act so foolishly. Good to know you think I'm smart. Paloma Diaz's composure was something to envy. Just listen to your wise mother. I repeat, you need to think about your well-being now, and you can always tie the knot later. And have you thought about my feelings? The young man persisted. Or are you only interested in your own thoughts and feelings? You'll have many Marias, but you only have one mother. So think about what you're saying. I don't need many. I only need her. Do you understand? Her son snapped, banging his fist on the table. Calm down, my dear, his mother approached and stroked his cheek. Don't be so nervous. You're my only one, and I don't want to fight with my only son. Well, then at least let me make my own decisions for once, Norman pleaded. Fine, have it your way, but don't come crying to me later, his mother warned. Do as you know best. For a whole week, Norman couldn't find peace. He thought a lot about his mother's words, and strangely, they made more sense to him over time. Despite loving Maria, his mother had always been his top priority. Ever since his father left them when he was 7, little Norman had promised himself that he would never abandon his mother and would always stay by her side. When he had nightmares, his mother would jump out of bed and run to comfort him and sing a lullaby. She was his only protector. He, in turn, believed that one day he would also become a protector and support for his dearly beloved mother. During his school years, classmates often called him a mama's boy, but Norman wasn't offended. He was proud of it because, looking at his classmates' relationships with their parents, he understood that there was no one better than his mother in the world. However, high school years were tough. Paloma Diaz constantly interfered in all aspects of his life, especially his personal life. As a result, Norman never had a serious relationship. His mother disliked every girl that came near him. She believed that none of them were worthy of her precious son. His first love affair happened in college when his mother wasn't around. He had never felt so free in his life, yet he also felt the lack of maternal love. But Rafaela, his first girlfriend, more than compensated for this love. He was with her 24 hours a day. Unfortunately, their romance ended 6 months later when Paloma came to visit her son. Upon discovering that her son was seeing some local floozy, she did everything possible and impossible to get her out of Norman's life. The boy didn't even understand how it happened. One day, Rafaela simply dumped him. But the worst part was, she did it via text message. Apparently, she was afraid of a face-to-face meeting. Norman initially wanted to talk to her in person, but his mother dissuaded him, saying it wasn't worth wasting his precious time and wounded feelings on such an unworthy person. Then, he had a slight depression, from which his mother pulled him out, once again making her number one in his life. Since then, Norman hadn't had any serious relationships. Just quick flings that only led to physical intimacy. And now, when he was in love again, he once more faced a choice between his mother and Maria, a choice he absolutely did not want to make. Yes, he had always dreamed of achieving great heights in his career, becoming a well-known figure, but not at the expense of his personal life. And he made the first decision in his life that he thought was right. Maria, he approached the girl, "I need to talk to you seriously." Now, she worried. "I can't, I have work." "Then I'll come by later." It was clear from his expression that the conversation was really serious, and it made the girl tense. She didn't like intriguing moments that, in her personal experience, never led to anything good. In the evening, Norman approached Maria again. "Are you free now?" "Well, you could say that," the girl nodded affirmatively. "Let's sit down," the young man suggested, gesturing towards the cozy guest area. "All right, let's go." Maria stepped out from behind the reception desk and followed the guy. "The main thing is, don't interrupt me," Norman began nervously. "I've thought a lot, but I've finally decided." "You're breaking up with me?" Maria was a bit surprised, but a spark of hope ignited in her soul, since she herself couldn't bring herself to break up with him due to her decency and gentleness. "No." "What are you talking about?" "Quite the opposite." "What do you mean by opposite?" the girl asked, holding her breath. "Maria, my love," Norman got down on one knee. Not this, she thought, as this was the last outcome she had anticipated. "I want you to be my wife." He handed her a red box. The very one every girl dreams of, but not Maria. At least, not from him. "Will you marry me?" Maria stared at Norman without blinking. She was so stunned that she couldn't even move. After a moment, she came to her senses and started looking around. Some colleagues and passing guests had stopped, waiting for her answer. Someone even shouted, "Say yes." But Maria couldn't bring herself to give any answer. "Come on, spare the guy, his legs must be numb by now," said a familiar male voice from behind. Maria realized she had heard that voice somewhere before. She turned around and saw a smiling young man who had once fleetingly appeared in her life and then, as she thought, disappeared forever. "Maybe we can handle this ourselves?" Maria replied somewhat rudely. "If you can't decide, say no," the young man continued. "Why are you interfering?" The girl was still agitated. "No one asked for your advice." "What's going on here?" Norman asked, still on his knee. Some passerby decided to give free advice, Maria fumed. Norman stood up abruptly, brushed off his knee, and shook the newcomer's hand. "Good evening, Marcelo Iglesias." I apologize for this scene, Norman said apologetically. Why are you apologizing to him? Maria was indignant, but then realized they knew each other. So you know him? Of course, one should know their superiors. Our superior is Natalia Gonzalez, and who is this? Hello, son, came the voice of the manager, who quickly approached Marcelo and gave him a tight hug. Son? Maria blurted out. Yes, Natalia Gonzalez laughed. They say we look alike. Like two peas in a pod, confirmed Norman. Let's go to the office, tell me about your trip. The woman took her son by the hand and led him towards the office. Marcelo turned to Maria, their eyes met. He winked at her. You know, Maria declared loudly in the lobby, I agree to be your wife. Marcelo stopped, stared at her intently, smirked, and followed his mother. I'm the happiest man in the world, shouted Norman and started crying. Stop it, please, the girl wiped his tears. All right, I'll get back to work. The next day, Maria kept expecting to see Marcelo, but he was nowhere to be found. Natalia Gonzalez, she called the manager, I'm sorry about yesterday. I just didn't know he was your son. It's all right, it happens, the woman smiled. He hasn't been around today, Maria continued, trying to find out where he was. He left. But it's strange. Why strange? You see, he studied abroad, finished his studies. I thought he had returned for good, but in the morning he started packing quickly. He didn't explain anything? The girl couldn't calm down until she found out where he was. He mumbled something nonsensical and left. The woman was upset about this. When will he be back? Why are you interested? The woman suddenly realized. By the way, congratulations. Thanks, for what? How come? You're getting married, Natalia Gonzalez smiled sincerely. Well, yes, right, Maria lowered her gaze, but the manager said no more and went about her business. And then Maria realized she had made a mistake. She shouldn't have agreed to the proposal. Her mind was a complete mess that she couldn't sort out herself. What should I do now, she thought, but there was no answer. A month later, preparations for the wedding began. Maria still hadn't dared to refuse, so she just went with the flow. Paloma Diaz constantly imposed her opinions on the future daughter-in-law about everything. And Maria agreed to everything. She didn't care how or where their wedding would take place, because she didn't want it at all. Even Maria's dress was chosen by her future mother-in-law, not giving a word to the girl's own mother. The day before the wedding, Maria was, as usual, working at the hotel. She was enjoying her last day of freedom, as the next day a completely different life awaited her, family life. Maria, Natalia Gonzalez interrupted her thoughts. Why are you at work today? It's my shift today. You should have come to me and asked for the day off. You have your wedding tomorrow. You should rest today, so go home, and I'll put someone else in your place, suggested the manager. No need, I'll finish my shift myself. This is not up for discussion, said Natalia Gonzalez sternly. The weather is good, take a walk, clear your thoughts, you seem overwhelmed. All right, agreed Maria and started getting ready. She left the hotel and walked along the avenue, watching the movement of the northern capital. The people passing by seemed so happy, something she couldn't boast of. The upcoming wedding felt like a burden on her shoulders. What are you thinking about? Marcelo approached her unexpectedly. You're back? Maria was surprised. Yes. And I'm due a date, reminded the young man. What date? Maria didn't understand. Remember? We agreed that if fate brought us together again, we would have a date. Oh, that's what you mean? Maria recalled sadly. Now is not the right time for that. Why not? Marcelo smirked. Because of your upcoming wedding? Exactly, so go your own way. Why did you agree to it? Marcelo started probing. I thought you would refuse. I don't even know. Maria began to open up. everything just spun out of control, then you appeared. Are you saying you agreed to marry someone else because of me? Marcelo laughed sincerely. What do you think of yourself? Maria was indignant. So much for modesty. Let's do this, Marcelo said intriguingly. Let's spend your last free day together. And why would we do that? Well, at least because you look very sad, and I'm a master of fun, Marcelo winked at her. So, what are your suggestions? Maria was curious. She was genuinely interested in the young man's intentions. Well, let's take a walk together first, and then I'll whisk you away to a very atmospheric place. He took her hand, and she didn't resist. She found it pleasant. For 3 whole hours, they walked around the city, stopping in shops where Marcelo bought some little things. Sometimes it was a jar of honey with walnuts, sometimes a box of hard candies, and in the last shop, Maria couldn't take her eyes off a beautiful rainbow umbrella she had wanted for a long time. Miss, Marcelo addressed the shop assistant, we'll take that umbrella. Excellent choice, the shop assistant approved and processed the purchase. This is for you, Marcelo handed the umbrella to Maria, as a trophy. Why? It wasn't necessary, Maria was embarrassed. I like doing something nice for you. He looked at her with tenderness and couldn't resist. His lips touched her soft lips, and they kissed. Anything else? The shop assistant brought them back to reality. No, thank you, Marcelo smiled. His heart was pounding like crazy. For a moment, it seemed to him that everyone around could hear it. Maybe we should go now? Maria asked barely audibly. She was very embarrassed by their unexpected kiss. Let's go. I know just the place. Marcelo confidently took her hand and led her. Maria didn't even ask where they were going. She didn't care as long as she was with him. In 20 minutes, they were in an unfamiliar apartment. What a large apartment. Whose is it? Maria asked. Mine, Marcelo replied. Do you live here alone or with your mom? Well, I'm already at the age when living with mom is just inappropriate. The young man smiled and approached Maria so closely that her legs wobbled with excitement. With one swift movement, he pulled her to him and kissed her again, and chills ran down her spine. She couldn't resist, nor did she want to. Passion engulfed them, and in a moment, they found themselves in the bedroom. Their bodies intertwined in a dance of love that seemed endless. All night they chatted about trivial things, avoiding serious topics. They felt at ease and happy together. When they made love again in the early morning, Maria's phone rang. She didn't let such a trifle distract her, and the phone kept ringing. When it was all over, she picked up her phone and saw 10 missed calls from Norman. At that moment, she felt terribly uncomfortable. No, she didn't feel guilty about what had happened, which also scared her. She just felt uncomfortable. Who is so persistent? Marcelo gently kissed her shoulder. Norman. Maria visibly saddened. Maybe it's time to tell him everything, the young man suggested. And what will I say? Maria got up from the bed abruptly. That right before the wedding, I cheated on him with someone else. Why think of it that way? It's not cheating, it's love. Just don't tell me you love me. Tears streamed down her face. Please don't. What do you take me for? The guy asked, offended. Do I look like a liar? Don't say anything, Maria cried. I'll just leave, and we'll forget everything. How can I forget this? He protested. Her words hurt him deeply. Did it ever occur to you that our meeting wasn't accidental? That up there, in the heavens, they brought us together again for a reason? Marcelo, please, stop. Maria couldn't stop crying. Goodbye. With these words, she ran out of the apartment and dashed home. Marcelo ran onto the landing in his underwear. I love you. 4 hours later, the newlyweds arrived to register their marriage. On the way, Norman didn't ask his bride why she hadn't answered the phone. The registration went smoothly. Everyone around was happy and crying with joy. Only the bride cried for a completely different reason. She realized she was making the biggest mistake of her life, but she couldn't do anything about it. She felt that Norman was her trial, which she had to pass with dignity. At the restaurant, guests partied to the fullest. The groom looked very happy, but the bride seemed to be in mourning. Her mother-in-law couldn't help but notice. "Can I steal your son for a couple of minutes?" she addressed the bride. "Mom, usually they steal the bride, not the groom at weddings," Norman joked and went with his mother. "Look at your wife, she looks terrible," Paloma Diaz started the conversation. "She's just overwhelmed," Norman tried to calm his mother. "Well, you're not blind," his mother shook him, "she doesn't love you." "Maybe that's enough," he pushed his mother away. "Stop ruining our wedding." "Well, as you wish," the woman huffed and returned to the festive table. "Dear newlyweds and guests, we have new arrivals," the host announced into the microphone. "More guests have come to congratulate the newlyweds." Maria looked toward the host and saw Natalia Gonzalez with her son. The girl was shocked and frightened by what was happening. "My dear Maria and Norman," Natalia Gonzalez began her congratulations, "I am happy that two of my most beloved employees have decided to unite their lives. I wish you happiness and prosperity. And here is my gift to you." The woman approached the newlyweds and handed them an envelope. Marcelo approached his mother and took the microphone from her. "I need no introduction, many here already know me," Marcelo began, "and for those who don't know me, I'll introduce myself. My name is Marcelo Iglesias, and I am the owner of the hotel where our newlyweds work." Maria felt a pang in her chest upon hearing the news. She couldn't believe it. She had always known that Natalia Gonzalez was the hotel manager and that she had been hired like any other employee. But finding out that her son was the owner was a shocking revelation for her. "I want to tell you a story," Marcelo continued. "A story of unfulfilled love. A young man once met a charming stranger by chance, and he fell madly in love with her at first sight. But the girl didn't believe in such encounters, so they agreed that if fate brought them together again, he would have a chance for at least one date with her. Time passed, and fate did not bring them together. And what do you think the young man did? Hired a detective to find her," someone from the audience shouted. "No, not that," Marcelo replied. "Maybe he followed her?" Norman suggested. "What do you mean?" Marcelo clarified. "Well, at their first meeting." "Right," Marcelo nodded. "He didn't rely on fate. He followed her to see where she lived. Then, of course, he waited honestly, but the meeting didn't happen. So the desperate lover decided to act. The girl was looking for a job at the time, and our guy had his own business." "And how did he invite her there?" Norman asked, while Maria, sitting next to him, began nervously drumming her fingers on the table. "She got a call from work at his request and was invited for an interview," Marcelo continued. "And bingo, she got the job without any experience, practically after a 5-minute conversation. Just like how you got hired at the hotel. Remember?" The groom nudged the bride lightly with his elbow. "Yes, coincidences do happen," Maria said sadly. "No kidding," Natalia Gonzalez said in amazement, looking intently at Maria and her son. "And what happened next?" someone from the audience shouted again. "Next, it was simple. He arrived at the most inopportune moment. His beloved was already promised to someone else. And he didn't even try to win her back?" Norman was indignant. "He tried, but unsuccessfully," Marcelo sighed deeply. "I would do anything to be with my beloved," the groom hugged the bride tightly. "Why did I tell this story? So that you never lose each other and always love and cherish one another." "What happened to that guy?" someone asked. "He remained unhappy for the rest of his life because he was a one-woman man." Marcelo picked up the nearest shot glass from the table, drank it, and winced. "Congratulations." And all the guests followed his example, starting to shout, "Congratulations." The newlywed stood up and began to kiss amid the applause. "Why are you crying?" Norman interrupted the kiss. "What's wrong?" "Oh, don't mind me. I'm just so happy, Maria replied, even though she felt miserable inside. And here's my gift. Marcelo opened his wallet and took out several bundles of 5,000 bills. They say happiness isn't in money but in its quantity. What a gift, Norman was amazed. Thank you for your generosity. So much, Paloma Diaz exclaimed, flying over. Let me hide it. We'll handle it ourselves. Maria took the money. Unfortunately, we must go now. Right, son? Natalia Gonzalez asked. Yes, you're right, Marcelo agreed, shaking the groom's hand. Then, bending over to the bride, he whispered in her ear, Be happy, my love. What wonderful people, the mother-in-law admired. What will you do with all that money now? Mom, we haven't decided yet. Let's talk after the wedding. Son, can I have a minute? Norman's mother called him with a cunning look. When Maria was left alone, her mother sat next to her. Daughter, you look pale. What's wrong? The woman was very worried. Maria said nothing, leaning on her shoulder and bursting into tears. Don't cry. Don't cry, dear. The woman stroked her head while her heart broke from her child's bitter tears. I might be wrong, but it seems you don't love Norman. No, the daughter whispered quietly. Silly girl, why did you marry him then? The mother asked without any reproach. Maria calmed down, gathered her strength, and told her mother everything. Well, the mother said slowly, it's a situation. Like watching a melodrama in the movies. Is that funny to you? The girl was offended. What are you saying? Of course not. The mother ran her hand through her daughter's hair and kissed her forehead. We need to think about what to do next. I don't know. But I do, the mother said confidently but in a whisper. They look like conspirators from the outside. You must leave your husband and be with the one your heart loves. But how? Maria spread her hands. Very simply, the mother continued. Let's run away together right now. Mom, are you crazy? Maria was shocked by her mother's suggestion. Norman isn't to blame. Well, then continue to live with him without love and joy. What are you whispering about? Norman returned. Just girl talk, Maria's mother smiled. Darling, we should go now. He took the bride's hand. Where to? The girl asked in surprise. We have our wedding night ahead, Norman smiled. The newlyweds had left, but the guests continued celebrating the wedding. Only Maria's mother went home, feeling she had nothing more to do there, secretly hoping that her daughter would make the right decision tonight. So, shall we start the tradition of the newlyweds? Norman's eyes lit up. In what sense? Maria didn't understand. We'll count the money. The groom began taking out all the money from the envelopes and counting it. Can't it wait until morning? The bride looked at him. Don't worry, I'll be quick. I still have energy for the wedding night. But I don't, the girl yawned, pretending to be very tired, although she actually didn't want anything else. Well, all right, go rest, but wait a minute. What? Maria asked irritably. I suggest we buy an apartment with the wedding money. Go ahead, the girl replied indifferently. And we'll register the apartment in my mother's name, Norman said casually. Why's that? Maria was outraged. I'm the head of our family, and I've decided so, the guy stated his position. Or your mother decided so? The girl was furious. So that's why she kept pulling you away at the wedding. Don't talk nonsense, the groom said calmly. You two really planned this well, Maria said sarcastically. I just don't understand why the apartment needs to be in your mother's name. It's simple, Norman smirked. She opened my eyes. It was you Marcelo was talking about at the wedding. You thought I was a complete fool. What are you talking about? Don't pretend. And to make sure you get nothing in a divorce, I'll register the apartment in my mother's name. The guy looked like a successful detective who had just solved a crime. You know what? Maria raised her voice. It turns out you don't love me, you only love your mother. At least she doesn't lie to me and would never betray me. The guy looked at his wife with disgust. I just realized why you didn't answer your phone this morning. You were with him. What are you talking about? The girl shouted. Did your mother tell you that too? And he's quite the charmer. Didn't even fear coming to the wedding. Norman smirked, and what a story he told. Brought tears to my eyes. What do you want from me? I want you to disappear from my life forever, Norman answered confidently. What? Did your love fade so quickly? Maria laughed. You know? It turns out that when someone stabs you in the back, love instantly evaporates. Then it wasn't love to begin with, the girl concluded. Maybe, Norman admitted, but now I have enough money to leave the hotel and start a new life. By the way, you're sleeping in the chair tonight, and in the morning, when I wake up, I don't want to see you here. You've changed quickly. That's what money does to people. Get lost, the groom shouted, I hate you. I thought better of you. Why did you marry me? Out of pity? Think what you want, Maria replied calmly. I'm going to sleep. Goodbye. Norman went to the bedroom, taking the money with him. Maria couldn't sleep. She couldn't understand why Norman had changed so drastically. She didn't want to believe it was all because of money. The girl was sure that he couldn't be 100% certain about her affair with Marcelo. In her mind, it all came down to the money. Where is the world heading? He had been such a good, decent person, and in one moment, a large sum of money drove him crazy, turning him into a cruel and unstable person. Early in the morning, while Norman was still asleep, the girl tiptoed into his room, quietly took the bag of money, and left the apartment. She walked through the morning city. The street sweepers had already started their daily work, even though it was just dawn. It was fresh and cloudy outside. She didn't know where to go. At first, Maria thought of going to her mother, but deciding she didn't need tears and long, tedious conversations right now, she headed. You? Marcelo was surprised, opening the door. He didn't expect to see Maria at his doorstep early in the morning, and in a wedding dress no less. Will you let me in? She asked shyly. Of course, come in. He opened the door wide and accidentally touched her hand. My God, you're freezing. It's cool in the morning, she explained. Let's get you straight into the hot water bath, he began fussing, and then I'll give you my warm robe and we'll have some hot coffee. No, actually, I'll make some mulled wine. Mulled wine? The girl was delighted. I love it. Me too, Marcelo smiled. It warms both the body and the soul. Maria entered the bathroom, took a warm shower, and her body slowly began to warm up. But her soul was still cold. Here's a robe, Marcelo said as he entered the bathroom. Get out, the girl said shyly. I'm not looking. The young man closed his eyes, then realized that wasn't enough and turned away. Is this better? Yes. Maria got out of the bath, dried herself with a towel, and put on Marcelo's robe. She felt nice wearing his thing. The robe seemed to be imbued with the scent of his body, which she still remembered. Take a seat, he seated her on a chair in the kitchen. Here's your mulled wine. The girl wrapped her hands around the glass. The warmth of the drink transferred to her body. After a few sips, the warmth filled her from the inside. How beautiful you are, Marcelo admired her. I'm glad you came to me. And I'm glad too, Maria looked down. You know, when my mom and I left your wedding yesterday, she interrogated me. She figured everything out? The girl felt guilty about the whole situation. I think everyone figured it out. The young man smiled broadly. That's why you're here. Did Norman understand too? No, his mother figured it out first, then she told him, and he confronted me only at home. He's got some self-control, I must say, Marcelo marveled. There's nothing to envy. He chose money, not me, the girl sighed. Did you want him to choose you? The young man was astonished. No, that's not what I meant. Maria began to justify herself. I meant he never loved me from the start. It was all an illusion. And he needed a push to realize that. Something like that. He turned out to need money. A lot of money. Well, I gave it to him, Marcelo laughed. You did it on purpose? Maria asked, surprised. Well, basically yes, the young man replied contentedly. You didn't know, but I got a second degree in psychology. I crack people like your Norman easily. And how did you know he'd choose money? I was hoping for that. Then why were you surprised by my arrival? You should have known I'd come. That's where you're wrong. I really couldn't have imagined you'd come to me. The thing is, when you love someone, you can't analyze their actions properly. Feelings get in the way. You love me? The girl asked. Very much. Madly, with every cell of my body and soul, Marcelo replied, picked her up, and spun her around the kitchen. Stop, the girl laughed loudly. I'm getting dizzy. Do you love me? He set her down and looked her in the eyes intently. Yes, she whispered and leaned in to kiss him. The young man didn't mind at all. He had been waiting for this moment. What did your mom say after all? Maria broke away from the kiss. She was very curious about Natalia Gonzalez's opinion on the matter. My mom told me not to give up and to fight for my love until the last drop of blood. Did she really say that? The girl laughed. Basically, the young man scratched his head. That's how it was. So she's not against our relationship? Not at all. He kissed her again. And what is that package you brought? Marcelo accidentally caught sight of it. Oh, Maria said slowly, I'll show you now. She took the bag and poured all the money onto the kitchen table. I don't understand. Marcelo looked focused. Did you steal money from Norman? Why steal? It was given to both of us as a gift. You little rascal, he gently wagged his finger at her. The money needs to be returned. How to return it? Protested Maria. I'm not giving anything back. My dear girl, Marcelo hugged her, give the money back to him and let's consider it your way out of family life with him. Well, then I'll take half, the girl pouted. Give it all back. You don't need to worry about money. I have plenty. But at least I can give it to my mom, Maria insisted. No need to think about your mom either. After all, she'll be my relative soon, my mother-in-law to be precise. Are you proposing to me? The girl beamed. Well, not right now. We need to prepare, make it beautiful, but yes, soon I will. Tears began to flow down Maria's face. Like tiny crystals, Marcelo started catching the tears with his fingers and even licked one. So salty, like the sea. Have you licked the sea too? The girl teased him. I accidentally swallowed it a few times, the young man recalled. I would also like to see the sea, Maria said dreamily. Great, Marcelo snapped his fingers, then we've decided on the honeymoon. We just need to choose which sea. Are you serious? The girl squealed with joy. Which sea will we go to? It's up to you. I've been to each one multiple times. Then let's go to the Red Sea, they say it's crystal clear. That's practically true, Marcelo smiled. He looked at the girl, feeling warmth in his heart. They were making plans for the future together, and it really warmed him. Then I'll give the money back to Norman today and put an end to this. Maria changed the subject. I've been thinking. Marcelo took a sip of the cold mulled wine and grimaced. You don't need to meet him. How will I give the money back then? Send it by mail? I'll deliver it. No need. Don't go to him, the girl begged. She was worried about Marcelo. Are you afraid for me? He noticed her fear. Of course. Who knows what's on his mind? Don't worry, everything will be fine. I'll go to him now, and you try to get some sleep. Agreed? I'll try, but no promises. Half an hour later, Marcelo was ringing Norman's doorbell. So you came after all? He opened the door. Marcelo noticed the guy was drunk. What do you want? And good morning to you too. Marcelo opened the door wider and tried to enter the apartment, but Norman didn't let him. Not even going to invite me in? Get out of here. Norman shouted down the hallway. You took my money and my girl, and now I'm left with nothing. Marcelo sharply hit the guy's face with the door. He fell. Marcelo picked him up off the floor and dragged him to the shower. Don't. It's cold. Norman screamed throughout the apartment. After a few minutes, he finally came to his senses. Why did you do that? Norman came out to the kitchen. Oh, you're back. I'm making you some strong coffee. Marcelo put a cup of coffee on the table and sat the guy down. What do you want from me? Norman couldn't calm down. Here's your money. Marcelo put the bag on the table, and Norman immediately looked inside. Are you going to count it? Who do you think I am? Who I think you are is my business, but your actions and words speak volumes. What do you mean? Norman didn't understand. When you opened the door, you said I took your money and your girl, Marcelo reminded him. I stand by my words. Your priorities are strange. Money comes first. Oh, that's what you mean. Well, those are just words. No, they're not just words, it's your attitude towards life, Marcelo continued. Maria wasn't important to you, she temporarily replaced money for you. How to explain it simply? Love and money are like drugs, but different. You, not getting one high, replaced it with another. And when you got what you really wanted, love became unnecessary. Stop brainwashing me. And what difference does it make now? Norman got up from the table. Now get out. I wasn't planning to stay, Marcelo smirked. She can file for the divorce herself, Norman said. And there won't be any need for a divorce. Marcelo's face was glowing with delight. He knew the taste of victory and felt its approach. You are not married. What do you mean? Norman was stunned. We signed the papers, had a wedding party at a restaurant. I arranged for it all to be fake. I knew she loved me, and she felt sorry for you. Why spoil her passport with an unnecessary stamp? You scoundrel! Norman lunged at him with his fists. Have you lost your mind? It's none of your business, Marcelo pushed him away. And if she finds out about everything, do you think she will stay with you? I'm not hiding anything from her. I truly love her, and unlike you, she is my top priority. I did all this just for us. I want to make her truly happy, understand? Get out. Norman shouted. I don't want to see you anymore. Marcelo calmly walked toward the exit. 2 years later, Maria and Marcelo were vacationing on the shore of the Red Sea. The girl couldn't believe her happiness. She enjoyed family life as Marcelo had become her support and protector. In return, she surrounded him with tenderness and care. Who's come to visit us? Marcelo cooed, looking at his daughter. How do you like the sea, my princess? You could ask me too, his wife pouted. I'm asking you too, he kissed her. Maria smiled with pleasure. Why are you fussing around here alone? Natalia Gonzalez approached them. Maria, your mother and I miss our granddaughter. We'll take her, and you two can relax. Maria lay next to her husband on the neighboring lounge chair. They held hands and looked at each other with such warmth, as if happiness itself filled them from within. Which, most likely, was the case. Well, I promised you the Red Sea, and a promise must be kept. Marcelo stroked her hand. But you promised for the honeymoon, his wife recalled. And whose fault is it that you got pregnant? Do you really not know who's to blame? Maria laughed. Well, I have my suspicions, but not 100%, Marcelo joked, but here we are, and we're together. Thank you for inviting my mom too, Maria thanked her husband. How could I not? Try not inviting the mother-in-law. She'd get back at me later, Marcelo laughed. It's actually good that our moms agreed to relax with us and work as grandmothers. Yes, they are great. Maria glanced aside and saw their daughter splashing in the water with her grandmothers, who hovered around her, not stepping away for a moment. "What do you think? Should we open a hotel by the sea?" Marcelo suddenly asked. "By the Red Sea?" Maria was stunned by the suggestion. "Well, let's start with the Black Sea. After all, it's our native country, and we'll think about the Red Sea later." And the couple began discussing opening a new hotel. Marcelo looked at his wife and realized that happiness and love truly existed in this life. He liked that he had all of this. What does a person really need? For at least one person on this vast planet to love him sincerely, despite minor flaws, and for you to be ready to change for the better for them. You can have a lot of money and be utterly unhappy, or you can be completely poor but happy because you are loved and awaited. But it's better if these two components coincide. Marcelo came to the conclusion that everything in his life was wonderful, and he sincerely wished the same for everyone in the world. But he still felt that something was missing, and he couldn't figure out what exactly. And then a family with 2 children passed by. Marcelo liked those cute kids, especially the clumsy boy, and it suddenly dawned on him. "We need another child," he interrupted his wife from her thoughts about the new hotel. "I don't understand." "We need a son," Marcelo declared confidently. "Right now?" Maria looked around. "Well, not here," Marcelo laughed. "Let's go to our room." "Okay, I'll just let our moms know." A year later, a wonderful little boy appeared in their family. Marcelo couldn't get enough of his fatherhood, and Maria was on cloud 9 with happiness. She couldn't believe that anyone could have such an incredible story as hers.
If you're enjoying it as well, leave a like and subscribe.